Hey, I'm learning Unreal Engine 5. Today we're going to add some bricks to our brick breaker game, and we're going to add some logic and refine the physics. To start with, I model a quick little brick, and we're going to add a health property so that we know when it needs to break. We're going to set the range from 0 to 100, and we're going to use a setter to set health to 100 when the game starts. Then we'll drag the object into the scene, press play, and we can see the health variable in the top left. But we don't need this. We can set the health value to 100 as a default and get rid of all this logic. Okay, back on the ball blueprint, we're going to add event hit, and we're going to set it up so that when the ball hits a brick, the brick is going to lose 10 health. Now this doesn't work on the first try, and I realized it's because I don't have the execution path with the white line running, but this was the beginning of a lot of different attempts to try and get these two items to collide and change variables. As you can see, I wasn't making much headway, so I do what I always do when I'm debugging, make it simple. We started with just an event tick, printing out the variable. Then I added in a key press to try and modify the health value. That didn't work, so I set up a little rig here just to modify the health value. And that does work. In the end, I just needed to check a box that says simulation generates hit events, and then the two objects were colliding as expected. With collision working properly now, I set up essentially the same rig we had before, where every time the ball collides with the brick, it subtracts 10 from the brick's health value. Alright, that's all well and good, but what's more interesting is when health reaches 0. So we set up some branching logic here so that if it reaches 0, we start simulating physics on the brick. Cool, that's most of the way there. Now I'm going to change it so that the brick still has physics, but it's going to overlap specifically with the ball so that they no longer collide. Alright, this is already significantly more fun. So we're going to add in some additional bricks, and we're going to break all of them, and it looks like they're colliding with each other, but not the ball. This is perfect. Now I don't know if this is more computationally expensive, but I wanted to move all of the health logic to the brick because it really has nothing to do with the ball, and we added some better logging. We don't want these bricks to stay around forever after they're broken, so after 5 seconds we destroy the actor. Alright, I'm happy with the bricks, but the ball physics are pretty bad, so let's create a physics material so we can play around with the settings. Alright, this is fine, I would say, but I decreased the mass and it's significantly more bouncy, which is more fun, but it also goes right through our collision plane we set up earlier. But we'll come back to that. For now, I want to create a paddle because I don't actually want to control the ball, I want to control a paddle that hits the ball and causes the ball to bounce. We're going to restrict the movement along the x-axis. We're going to also add in some logic using the move component 2 node when we press the A and D key to move it left and right. We add the paddle to the scene and we set it to auto-possess the player 0. I press the A and D keys and nothing happens. After some research, I decided to scrap that approach and I used the set actor location node instead. This works, but it looks terrible and it probably won't be physics friendly, so I scratched this approach as well. After even more research, I realized my current methods are very primitive and I should be using an input action. This is essentially an abstract concept that allows you to map a key bind to a specific input. You can map different keys, combinations of keys, whether it should hold or press, etc. And then use a mapping input controller to bind them all together. Here I am assigning the A key to the left input and the D key to the right input. Now we add this input setup to our blueprint using the enhanced input local player subsystem, which is a thing I don't understand at all, but we'll come back to it at some point, I'm sure. We now add our left and right movement using the left and right inputs, and this is what we get. Now clearly we don't want our paddle to be going through the walls on the left and right side, so I set up some additional logic here to try and set the min and max that it can move on the x-axis. Alright, this is looking great. Now you remember how the ball was clipping through the collision plane earlier? Well, it turns out that was a very primitive approach as well. There's actually something for this called a blocking volume. I don't know if these should overlap or not, but I'm just going to quickly create a ring around it, and I'm not going to worry about creating some fancy mesh. Alright, so here we are. We can now control the paddle left and right. The paddle bounces the ball can break bricks, we have some decent physics in place, and nothing is clipping through the edges. We've got some bare bones gameplay here, but in the next video I want to focus on finding the fun. What would make somebody want to play this for 10 seconds or 10 minutes? Then we can worry about content and spicing it up after.